There's only a little bit over 6 weeks left of this year, and we are going to spend the next 6 weeks together getting our health on track so that we can start 2026 feeling amazing. Health is just so fundamental in accomplishing any sort of goal, and I think when you feel at your healthiest, you are going to be more likely to accomplish whatever personal or professional goal that you have. And I actually want you to think of a goal that you have right now for 2026. Could be anything that you feel like you will be more likely to accomplish that if you are living a healthy and balanced lifestyle. I want you to really think about it and write it down in the comments. I'll wait. Okay, now get ready with your pen and paper because we are going to go through a 6-week plan together. I'm in this with you, even though I'm a doctor. I am not perfect. I need to work on these things too. And we're going to start implementing it today to make sure that we're going into 2026 as our healthiest versions of ourselves. And we're going to do that by implementing small, attainable habits that are not a huge lift, not going to overhaul your life, but will make a huge difference. And yes, I'm going to be in this with you. So if you are interested in following along with my journey and how things are going, please subscribe, follow along. I would love to have you. So we're gonna jump right into week 1, and this is gonna be pretty simple. Just one thing that I'm asking you to do, and that is to go see a doctor. Get a physical, do some preventive care. Because there's a good chance that if you haven't seen a doctor in a while, you are due or overdue to have your blood pressure checked, your blood cholesterol checked, your blood sugar, your hemoglobin A1C checked. You should get yourself screened for sexually transmitted infections if you are sexually active. And then of course, making sure you're up to date on vaccines. It's not just flu and COVID. You may be a candidate for a tetanus vaccine, a shingles vaccine, a pneumonia vaccine. These are all recommended in certain populations. And please make sure that you are getting your age-appropriate cancer screening. So these are things like pap smears, mammograms, colon cancer screening. It doesn't have to be a colonoscopy anymore. You can actually just do stool samples. And then even lung cancer screening, some people are candidates for if they have a significant smoking history. And these cancer screenings are just so important and such low-hanging fruit. You want to make sure you're up to date and that you are not skipping them. So I want you to go to this doctor's appointment and I want you to bring at least one question about your personal health. It could be something like, look, I have a family history of XYZ disease, and I want to talk about minimizing my own personal risk. And we're going to talk about this a little bit later in the video, but if you have any sort of unhealthy or what you perceive as unhealthy relationships with substances, like tobacco or alcohol, marijuana, anything, this is a really good opportunity to ask that question of how you can manage that, because there's so many things that we can do, both medication and non-medication approaches, to help people have healthier relationships with substances. Okay, week number 2 is sleep. Now we're gonna get into more of the nitty-gritty lifestyle habits here. And I'm not saying that you have to figure out how to have perfect sleep in 1 week, but what I am saying is that we're gonna use this week to start building some healthier habits around sleep. Maybe your sleep is already great, maybe not, but I think we all have something that we can work on to at least make our sleep higher quality. And there's really 2 reasons that we're starting with sleep so early on in this plan. One is because it's really a foundational piece. Like, if you sleep well, you're more likely to follow through with other healthy habits. We all know that if you're sleep deprived, you're going to be more likely to eat junk food and less likely to move your body. And secondly, because there is substantial scientific literature that shows that people who consistently get sufficient high quality sleep are much healthier and have a better quality of life than people who are chronically sleep deprived. And those people who are getting chronically insufficient sleep, we know that they are at a higher risk for cognitive and memory issues, mood issues, they're at a higher risk for cardiovascular disease, they even have a higher risk of premature death. So we really want to focus on sleep. It is so fundamental. You probably know that we should all be aiming for about 7 to 9 hours a night. Obviously, that's going to be very individual. Some people need more, closer to 7. I myself need closer to 9. But here are some top things that I recommend to make sure you're not only getting that quantity of sleep, but that you're getting good quality of sleep. And these are all things that have worked for me and are backed by scientific evidence. The first big thing, and if you only do this, this would be great, and that's really to pay attention to the light that you're getting into your eyes at various times during the day. So first thing in the morning, you want to get as much natural light as possible into your eyes. If you can go outside, great. If not, just opening a window and looking outside. Obviously, you don't have to stare directly into the sun. You know what I mean. And then on the flip side, at night, a few hours before you go to bed, you want to be really toning down and minimizing the bright overhead light that you expose yourself to. You want to be focusing on low lighting, maybe even candle light, and making sure it's warm, not like the bright blue light from a screen. Doing these 2 things when it comes to light will greatly increase the health of your circadian rhythm, which will lead to better, higher quality sleep and make it easier to fall asleep, because it's so frustrating when you know you need to sleep and you just can't fall asleep. The second thing I would say, this is also hugely important, and I really want you to try to implement it this week, is to keep a consistent sleep schedule. So that means going to bed and waking up at almost exactly the same time every day. Like, it doesn't have to be down to the minute, but within a half an hour period is excellent. A couple other things to try if you've already got these down and you want to incorporate something new is to, one, before you go to bed, make a to-do list for everything that you have to do the next day, so that you're not up ruminating and worrying about the things that you have to do. It's all on the page. You can also try taking a warm shower before you go to bed. This will paradoxically lower your core body temperature, which is a signal to your body that it's preparing for sleep. And lastly, you can try a sleep meditation before bed. Now, we're going to talk a lot more about meditation later in the video, but when it comes to sleep, a lot of people find that this really helps. Let's move on to week 3, where we are going to be focusing on nutrition. And we are just going to be focusing on making a few key adjustments, not a dietary overhaul, so that it doesn't feel overwhelming. I'm going to make it really, really simple, because my personal belief is that nutrition is often way overcomplicated. So I know I probably don't have to explain how important nutrition is in overall health, but it is worth mentioning that the number one cause of death and disability in the world is poor dietary habits. And those poor dietary habits are primarily from eating over-processed food with too much sugar, too much refined grains, and too many animal products. We also know that the standard American diet in particular is extremely lacking in fiber, and this lack of fiber is directly contributing to a range of chronic diseases down the line, including cardiovascular disease and certain types of cancer. So what I want you to focus on for this week is, number 1, less animal products, number 2, less ultra-processed foods, and number 3, more fiber. There's an acronym that I want you to keep in mind to make all of this really easy and that I absolutely love, and it's BBG. That is going to be beans, berries, and greens. Give beans a chance if you haven't already, and try to increase them if you already are incorporating them. They are an excellent source of plant-based protein. They have tons of fiber, tons of micronutrients, and they're also one of the few plant-based sources of lysine, which is an essential amino acid that's often lacking in pure plant-based diets. People who regularly eat beans do have a lower cholesterol, lower blood pressure, lower weight, lower waist circumference, and overall lower risk for cardiovascular disease and metabolic issues down the line. The second B is berries. I mean, don't get me wrong, all fruits are great, but if you are open to trying berries, please do, because they are really the star of all fruits, I would say. Again, tons of fiber, tons of vitamins and minerals. And one thing that's really unique about berries is they have an extremely high polyphenol content. These are very, very potent antioxidants that help the body in numerous ways, responding to all sorts of outside stressors, and they actually help promote a healthy gut bacteria, which is really, really important. And then just like berries are the star of fruits, green leafy vegetables are going to be the star of all vegetables. Again, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but they are extremely high in fiber and antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. And studies show that people who have an increased consumption of these types of greens, so spinach, broccoli, collard greens, kale, and others, have a lower incidence of cardiovascular disease and certain cancers, and have a lower all-cause mortality. And obviously, I don't mean to say that these are the only healthy foods and the only ones that actually matter. If all you're doing is focusing on reducing your processed food intake this week, that's fantastic. But just by the simple fact of incorporating more BBG into your diet, you will automatically be reducing your processed food intake, automatically be reducing your animal intake. And as I said, you will automatically be increasing your intake of fiber. Now, if you want to go deeper into nutrition, I actually have an additional video about this that I made in the past, so feel free to check that out if you want to go deeper. But for this week, if you just do BBG, great. Week number 4 is movement. I like to call it movement instead of exercise. That's just me. You can call it whatever you want. And if I made nutrition simple, we're going to make movement even more simple. We're not going to go into anything like start Pilates because that's really good for this certain health outcome, and start cycling because that's really good for this other health outcome. None of that. I just want you to focus on any sort of movement that gets your heart rate up that you actually enjoy doing. And I want you to focus on doing that thing that moves your body and elevates your heart rate for 150 minutes each week. This could be hiking, brisk walking, dancing, just something that leaves you a little bit breathless. And it just is as simple as doing it 30 minutes a day, 5 days a week. I will give you an alternative if that does sound like a lot and you're someone who likes to do higher intensity workouts. If you do what's called vigorous activity, you only need to do it for 75 minutes a week. So that's going to be something like tennis or running, doing sprints intervals, or doing high intensity interval training. Again, this is as simple as doing 3 days a week, 25 minutes. So easy. Now, I know I said that I wasn't going to promote any one type of particular exercise, but I do have a slight exception to that. And that's, I want you to try to at least make part of this time that you're exercising strength training. And that's because national guidelines recommend that we all be doing some version of strength training twice a week because it has massive benefits on health. It's been shown to reduce the risk of multiple chronic diseases. It promotes bone health. It reduces the risk of frailty in older age. And there are studies that even show it helps promote self-confidence and self-esteem. So it's magic. What I will not do is tell you to follow one particular type of strength training. I'm not saying you have to go to the gym and do a really complicated weightlifting routine, although you can if you want. But you can also do Pilates. You can also do home, body weight exercises. There are so many videos on YouTube that you can find that will help guide you through some sort of strength training program that you feel comfortable with. Okay, number 5 is meditation. Yes, I am going to ask you to start meditating this week. At least try it, because it is one of the most effective ways to not only manage the stress that we all deal with just by living in the modern world, but also to rewire your brain so that you have less stressful thoughts in the first place. In other words, it can actually make your brain less prone to experiencing a given event as stressful. I'm particularly talking about mindfulness-based meditation practices because there's so many studies that show that they increase acceptance and present moment awareness. And this is directly related to lower stress, lower anxiety, and lower depression. And greater acceptance skills in particular improves emotional regulation, makes you less prone to stress, and reduces harmful behaviors like catastrophizing and rumination. Meditation has also been shown in studies to foster adaptive cognitive behaviors like positive self-appraisal and self-compassion, both of which also buffer against stress. And we know that chronic stress can be so detrimental for our health. It can lead to, again, so many different chronic diseases. So managing this stress is absolutely key in making sure that we're the healthiest version of ourselves. On a physiologic level, the studies have shown that meditation reduces cortisol levels in the long term, reduces sympathetic nervous system activation, your fight or flight response. It also increases the level of anti-inflammatory markers and decreases the level of pro-inflammatory markers in your body. So yes, you are going to start, at least try a mindfulness-based meditation practice this week. You're just going to start with maybe 5 minutes a day, work up to maybe 10 or 15 minutes if you can. Now, how are you going to do this? You can use an app like Headspace or Open. I love Open, but it is subscription-based, so you would have to pay. But there's so many free resources out there. Even YouTube has probably thousands of mindfulness-based meditations. Now, if you do try it, and all I'm asking you to do is try, and you're like, this isn't for me, I don't like it, something about it feels weird, all I would ask you to do is just try to implement some other form of stress reduction practice. This could be art, this could be journaling, this could be gratitude lists. These are all great for stress reduction as well. And the bottom line is, for our health, to live healthy lives, we have to be managing chronic stress. Acute stress is okay. Getting nervous before a talk or before a date or having a long day at work. If you feel stressed, that's okay for the short term. What we're going to try to do is manage those chronic levels of stress that we know significantly damage health in the long term. And we have arrived at week 6. If you've made it this far, congratulations. What we're going to do this week is something that sounds simple, but is a little bit more nuanced. We're going to reframe our relationship with substances. I'm going to specifically talk about alcohol and tobacco here, but obviously if you're dealing with something more significant, whether it's opioids or cocaine or something else, please talk to your doctor about it. Because for all substance abuse issues and concerns, there are effective treatments that exist, both medications and non-medications. Now, first of all, if you smoke, I want your number one priority, not just of this week, but just of this whole challenge, to be focusing on quitting smoking completely or reducing as much as you possibly can. It's not just lung disease and lung cancer that you have to worry about with long-term smoking. It's also heart attacks, strokes, other types of cancer that have nothing to do with lung cancer. Smoking increases your risk for those too. And believe me, I know quitting is so hard. It's one of the hardest things to quit. But please believe me when I say that there are so many effective treatments, and it's not just nicotine gum or patches. There are other medications that your doctor can prescribe that can help you. So please, please, please talk to your doctor about this if you haven't yet. Let's talk a little bit about alcohol, because that's a little bit more complex and nuanced. It used to be that we said that moderate or light drinking, like 1 drink a day, was actually health promoting. Now more scientific evidence has come out, and we know that's not true. The safest way to approach alcohol is to not drink at all. It's actually classified as a carcinogen, which means that it increases the risk for certain types of cancer, and it increases the risk for heart disease, liver disease, and other chronic conditions. So my view as a doctor on alcohol is that we should all be trying to drink as little as possible. With that said, I do drink personally, but I do so very intentionally. Like if I'm really craving something, for example, I went out with my partner last week to a cocktail bar that was really famous, and of course I enjoyed a couple cocktails. If I'm at a football game, I love to drink a cold IPA, especially if it's warm and sunny outside. And I accept that even with my light, moderate occasional drinking, that I may have a slightly higher risk for diseases that are rare to begin with. So I'm okay with that, because there is a benefit to my perceived quality of life by having a really good drink every now and then. Now, if you are drinking heavily, if you're struggling with alcoholism or just what you perceive to be a really unhealthy relationship with alcohol, again, this is something that your doctor can help you with. There are medications that can help you quit or cut down. The 2 that I prescribe most commonly is number 1, naltrexone. It's a once a day medication that is fantastic, and most people are candidates for. For people who don't want this or aren't a candidate for naltrexone, I use acamprosate. Also excellent. The studies show really, really good results for both of these medications. I'm happy to go into more detail about this in another video if you're interested, but the bottom line is, for all of these things, all substance related things, talk to your doctor, because they really can help. And that concludes your 6-week plan. Best wishes. Again, I'm going to be doing these myself. So if you want to follow along and subscribe, I'm going to be posting updates on how I'm integrating all of these into my life here. I live in Mexico City. And I'm going to work on implementing them in a way that feels easy and not painful, and above all, not overcomplicated. So if you want to follow along, please subscribe. Leave whatever questions you have in the comments. I absolutely love answering questions. I would also love to hear feedback, things that you want for our next video. I love having you here, so please feel free to ask anything, and I will see you in the next video.